If this is a random image of Genshiken on this video, then that means I'm making a video response to somebody. Sup everyone, Darkscream217 here, and this is a video response to HadouSenGoku's video. It's an anime discussion on seasonal anime versus ongoing anime. And I do recommend you get around to watching that video if you are watching this video response. Or you can pause the video, watch his video. I'll post a link in the description until he accepts it as a video response, which I hope he does, because I really don't have any animosity towards him, but I do have some things I disagree with him on certain parts of his video. In fact, it's almost similar to my Manga Quest's video of short versus long anime, and I made a video response to that too. I guess I just like expressing my opinion that I prefer some of the shorter seasonal anime. And yes, I am more of a seasonal man than I am an ongoing man for a few reasons. Most of them you listed. It's easier to get into. It's easier to backtrack. There's not that many episodes to watch and catch up to, and you can get a decent experience from watching the whole thing start to finish. I'm usually not a fan of ongoing anime because they're just that long, and some of the episodes do tend to drag on, and I actually do get bored watching certain episodes. I thought they could trim most of the stuff out and keep it well paced, which is what Dragon Ball Z Kai is. It's basically Dragon Ball Z minus the filler, and as a result, I actually really love that series over the original Dragon Ball Z. Not that the original Dragon Ball Z is bad, it still has a place in my childhood. It's one of the very first anime I've seen. But I thought Kai definitely fixed some of the problems, and most of it was because of the filler, and it just made it a better pace show to watch. But speaking of filler, you would say filler is bad, or most of the filler is bad, but usually some seasonal anime back in the day did have a few filler episodes that you could skip over, and you won't because it had nothing to do with the major arc. There were a few filler episodes of Slayers in the second season that you can actually just skip on over because it doesn't really tie into the major arc during the plot. That being said, I still recommend watching those episodes because I thought they were rather entertaining and pretty funny episodes. Like there's one episode where they had to kill a sea dragon just so they can cook up a really nice dinner, but it turns out at the very end of the episode it would take a couple years to have it fully cooked and prepared. So certain filler episodes can be entertaining. Actually, one filler episode I do miss from Dragon Ball Z was the episode, and I don't care how much sense it doesn't make in terms of the character and plot, and it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I still like this episode. It's when Goku and Piccolo actually had to get were actually getting a driver's test so they can each get a license because Teachy is pissed off walking home to get the groceries. I did find that episode to be really funny and pretty damn entertaining, and it's so bizarre seeing a green alien with antennas out of his head trying to get a driver's license on Earth. It just depends on how the filler is written and how it's utilized. I don't mind them as like breaks in between major story arcs of an anime, just as long as they don't go like over 3 to 5 episodes of filler, then that's okay. Or that's how I see it. That's just me. Okay, now I want to move on to the whole reviewing part of your video response. Speaking as a reviewer myself, yeah, I usually go for the seasonal anime because for almost the same reasons. That being said, people shouldn't be discouraged on reviewing some of the ongoing anime. They may not be able to review it in its entirety at the moment because the show is still going. That being said, there is a better alternative. People can actually review an ongoing anime by the story arc if they wanted to. You said nobody's going to review One Piece in its entirety, or you don't see that happening. But I can actually see that happening. I can see some guy who has followed One Piece from start to right now, or even to finish, but instead of reviewing it as a whole thing at once, They could just review it by the story arcs. They can review it by the Arlong arc. They can review the little garden arc. They can review the Alabasta arc, all in like separate videos or separate contents. Because sometimes, and this is another thing about ongoing anime, sometimes people's opinions flow differently. Like there's never a straightforward consistency. There's just never a straightforward consistency. I've mentioned this before when I talked about Naruto coming back to Toonami. Naruto fans, there are some people who actually really liked the first series, and then all of a sudden it went downhill in Shippuden, or the other way around. They thought the first series was okay but had its problems, but they thought Shippuden was better. Or they actually thought Shippuden was great at the beginning, but then it started going downhill. And they could actually explain how they prefer this over this by making separate reviews. The only thing I get annoyed about, though, is if they review by the episode. I think that's pretty damn ridiculous. I honestly think they should at least review, or this is just me. If I do want to get their, if they do want my attention, it would be a better idea if they just review by the arc, which is no different than reviewing by the season, because certain seasonal animes do have multiple seasons under its belt. They can either do that, or they can review 10 episodes at a time, or something like that. That's just me. But it's okay for them to, start reviewing. I've seen people review some of this longer anime in the past. The Anime Overviewer, when he started on a separate channel, his first review was actually Bleach, and as we all know, it wasn't, and this was years ago, so Bleach was not even done, or close by then. He took it off because his mind changed, but he could have still just reviewed it by a certain story arc or something. And I know another reviewer by the name of AmyRat151, also known as the Anti-Fangirl. She reviewed only the first season of Naruto. Okay, now in one point of the video you said that a pro for the ongoing show is that the longer the show is, the more fans it generates. I'm assuming that you're going by the word of mouth theory, that as long as show is still on the air, people still talk about it, and as a result, people's curiosities will get piqued, and they would start checking the show out themselves, and there's a good chance that they might like it, or they might dislike it. I personally think that the more popular show is, not only will you generate more fans, but you may actually generate more haters too. Now, while I kind of disagree, because a show that's ongoing for several years with more than 100 episodes in, I just find it a chore and a hassle on trying to play catch up. Especially if it's an episode that goes over 30 episodes, I would find that kind of a hassle. I've seen most people not give a show a chance because they would have to watch it from the beginning, or they just don't want to start in the middle somewhere, because most of these animes are very heavy on continuity. But my counterpoint is, just because a show or a seasonal show has ended doesn't mean it's too late to generate fan bases for it. You can be late to the party, you could still watch the show that's like, about a year to even 20 years old, and you could still turn around and say, yeah, you're a fan, and you could still watch, enjoy it, and you could still generate discussion, talk about how much you like the show to other people. I don't believe in a statute of limitations when it comes to watching anime. I mean, people still talk about Gurren Lagann, and that's several years old. Hell, you actually mentioned it in your video. That's a prime example. I still think if people still talk about the show, and they can, it would still generate some other fans. I was late to the party on a few other anime that were a couple years old. I still watched it, and I was still a fan. So I don't see why. And that's kind of the point of what I do as a reviewer. Other than reviewing some of the obscure stuff, I also like to get some classics that might have been forgotten that I kind of want to bring back to the mainstream eye. That's why I review stuff like Project Eiko, and I do want to get around to reviewing Martian's successor Nadesico once I pick up that show. And another counterpoint I want to make is that you say that shorter anime doesn't utilize, character development, which most of it is true, but I got 2 points to mention. One, I don't think all the side or most of the side supporting characters need that much heavy character development like most ongoing anime does. Hell, Dragon Ball Z, back when it was an ongoing anime, there wasn't much development on the character Raditz outside of the fact that he's a fucking evil sociopath and he's Goku's brother and he was more powerful than him at the time. That much I know about him. Same thing with Nappa. He was a guy who was tougher than Raditz, and he was just Vegeta's underling, and he's pretty powerful and likes to blow shit up. And you know what? That's all I need to know about those particular characters. Some of the side characters, some of the shorter season anime, I do not really need to know that much about them, other than what they do and what's their purpose, in particular to the show's plot. But there have been characters that did get a good amount of development, or that's what I personally think. There's one, but it would have to be either in a second season of a show, or it would be in a show with a 26 episode frame, which I think is the ideal frame for an anime, because they used to do that a lot back in the 80s and 90s. Nowadays you don't see it much, but they still do exist, like Sword Art Online. One character I like to reference is Rin Suzuki from Bamboo Blade, an anime I watched and reviewed at the end of 2012. I think it was a while ago. She was the rival of Tamaki, and she got introduced pretty late into the series, and they still managed to focus on her well enough, and they even developed her, and they even had like this really interesting chemistry between her and Tamaki, because Rin was a fan of a Super Sentai meta show that Tamaki was also a fan of, but her favorite character was a rival of Tamaki's favorite character, and I thought I thought she was a pretty entertaining and very well memorable side character. So those are my counterpoints on character development. Not everything needs copious amounts of character development, and sometimes seasonal anime does do it for its side characters, and they do it pretty well without overloading it. Like in the first season of Naruto, they actually developed two of the antagonists. I thought they developed them way too fucking much, more than the main characters of the show. I mean, they did get development later on. At least I hope I did. I mean, the show is like, what, 500 episodes if you count Shippuden. I thought they developed the two antagonists for that particular season way too much, and they don't even appear later on in the series. They both die, which I thought was kind of annoying. And that was like the only arc of Naruto I've seen too. So after that, I decided not to continue watching the show, because I thought it was, well, I've said this time and time again, I just thought the show was boring. I didn't get into it. I was yawning through most of the first season. So yeah, this was a pretty long video, longer than Goku's video, which was only about 12 minutes. This one went for 13, maybe going 14 if I keep rambling. So that's all I got to say. Post your thoughts on seasonal versus ongoing anime in the comments below. Check out his video. Share his thoughts with him as well. That's all I gotta say. Check out his channel if you want. Darkscream217 signing out, and I hope to get other videos out soon.